Hi, this is Cheryl Moot. Thanks for joining me in my garden while I work on a piece for Thanksgiving. And I want to show you how to create some volume in a cornucopia before you do your tangling on top of it. Started this piece and put some base coat colors down, and mostly I have been using my Inktense pencils, which I really like. But for the cornucopia, I really haven't found that I have the right colors to mix to get what I have in mind for it. I'm going to mix a little bit of this nickel azo, which is a nice warm yellowy color, with just a touch of quinacridone gold. These paints are quite strongly pigmented, so you don't need a lot. There we go. So that's going to be my my darker tone for the basket, sort of the shade area. And then I'm going to mix a little bit more of that. And just the merest touch, just to take that little bit of brightness off. There we go. And I want this to be fairly thin. So now what I'm going to do is move over here to my cornucopia, and I just want to point out that in terms of laying out how this is going to work, I've gone in pencil and I've worked out how it's going to slope across, and also some positioning lines for these struts. If I had just done that accidentally as I went, I might not have got the right perspective that I was looking for. So, first things first, I am going to just put a really quick wash of that over there. And I'm feeling that that is really yellow still. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that. That's better. And I'm just putting in some background color. Now remember, you can turn your paper. It's just like doing tangles. It's easier to turn the paper and work with your hand than against it. And you'll notice I'm keeping the point of my paintbrush out to that drawn edge. Now I'm going to go over where I've already put some of the basket weave lines in. I used to always do my tangling first and then put my lines in, and I found that my lines got a little grayed out or fuzzy looking. They didn't bleed, they just got obscured. So now I generally put some color in behind. I may go back in and correct it later, but it keeps me from having to go over all my tangled lines again, which is what I found I was doing. Okay, now while that's wet, I really want to keep working. If you looked at a cornucopia sitting on your table, you would find that there is shadow down in here, a light section here, and then a little bit of shadow over there. I'm still not entirely happy with that color that I've got, so I'm just going to do this and bring everything a bit browner. That's better. I think now with the tangling on top, we're more in the range I wanted to be in. Okay. You can just see I'm just playing around with the color, and while that's wet I can continue to add and things will flow. I won't get a hard edge. If that's been a problem you have, you just need to wet your paper. You've got less control over the watercolor, but you don't get the hard edges. So now I'm going to put that darker color in along here, just to sort of give that feeling of shadow under there, and the little bit there. Okay, and there where I've already tangled, I'm going to come in and put some shadow there from that little oak leaf. I'll post pictures of this in progress from now until when I finish it as well with this blog, so that you can see. And then the rim of the basket, haven't quite decided what tangle I'm going to use for it yet, but I'm just going to quickly paint it in as well. I'm going to want to come back in in a few minutes and put a little bit something really dark in there, because that pear is going to cast a shadow in this little gourd. And so while that's drying a little bit, I'd like to talk about these grapes. So I started with a simple base coat on them, and then just added a stroke with my Derwent pencils. These Inktense pencils, once they're dry on your page, don't move again. They're permanent. This is the fuchsia one. What I will tell you is that I often use my paintbrush and take some color just this way off and add it to things as I move along. But when I've done that, these seal, because they're permanent when they're dry. If this has been wet, it's sealed. And so in order to reactivate it, you just need to sharpen it a little wee bit, just to take that little skin off that forms on the pencil. If you've had trouble with those pencils in the past, that may be why. So now I can get a nice little crisp line here, because I'm really trying to build up that feeling of volume with these. I need some darks on the bottom. I want to leave the highlights up there. I'll likely do these grapes with Printemps, so it'll look shaded when I do it. So you can see now I can just go in with my wet brush and just touch that in there. Now that's with a normal paintbrush, but what I actually often use is a water brush when I'm working with my Derwents. It just makes it much more portable. This one has a chiseled edge. It's more common to see them with a pointed. But you can see how that just starts to brighten up and make those grapes come alive. So now if we look back over here at the cornucopia, you can now see that this is settling in here. It's a nice shadow at the bottom. I just want to make it just a little wee bit darker. One thing I should just mention here in closing is I would never work on the pear at the same time as I was working on this rim. If you've got dry beside where you're working, your watercolor stays where it's put, but if you don't, then you don't have any control. And just before I started doing this video, I suddenly thought, I wonder why we use cornucopias, why they're the shape they are. And it turns out it goes back to Greek mythology. The story being that Zeus had a nursemaid who was a goat, and one day when he was playing and being a little rambunctious, he tore one of her horns off, and because he was a god, things went that she now had a magic horn that guaranteed abundance. Would always be plenty with food for her. So there you go. Like I said, we'll post some still photos of the next stages and how I build that up from there. Hope you've enjoyed this and found it useful.